Hey guys, this is Tauna, and today we're going to be talking about a $2 uncommon that just does insane work in so many decks. It can mana fix you, it can, enable some crazy combos. And as I said, it's $2. It's pretty available too because it only released like within the last year. So we are going to be talking about make sure you subscribe to start off with, spelunking. Spelunking is honestly one of my favorite cards. It is just absolutely crazy. It is an uncommon from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, so not released all that long ago. It's only 3 mana, but it does a bunch of nice stuff. So first of all, it's 3 mana to draw a card. That's a good start, and to play a land from your hand onto the battlefield. But the best part is this bottom bit. It is an enchantment. It's going to take a little bit for people to be able to remove. But here, lands you control enter the battlefield untapped. So there is a lot of really great ways for you to be able to abuse this, whether it's going to be. So let's start with ramp spells. So usually when you cast a ramp spell, you would be going through and getting some lands onto the field in exchange for spending mana. So say, rampant growth here. You're spending 2 mana, you're getting a land out, and boom, you can't use that land until next turn. It's going to take you a little bit to be able to do it. But this, with spelunking, essentially becomes refunding the mana from it. So something like rampant growth means that you are going to be able to, bring them out untapped, and then you can tap it immediately. So you're spending 2 mana to get 1 mana untapped for future use on that turn. There's just lots of great ways to be able to abuse it. Collective Voyage, everyone gets to spend mana, and then each player gets to search for X basic lands, and that means that yours are going to come in untapped, other people's will come in tapped, but you can just use this to be able to do, get a lot of lands out potentially that are all going to be, again, untapped. We've got land recursion. Land recursion is balanced by the lands coming back tapped because you can't use them. So this is returning lands from the graveyard to the battlefield. And as I said, like most of the time they come in tapped. However, you can then with this bring them back untapped. It just immediately breaks this, where something like Aftermath Analyst in a mill deck becomes sacrifice Aftermath Analyst for 4, bring back, let's say 10 lands that are in your graveyard back onto the battlefield, and then you've got 10 mana to be able to work with immediately, potentially more depending on what lands you brought into there. So Head Shredder here, whatever lands are put into your graveyard from your library, put them back onto the battlefield tapped. Oh, look, now they're untapped. So you mill yourself for a little bit, and you're just ramping thanks to milling. It's actually really awesome. So we've got the fetch lands. So now, fetch lands are a great way to be able to mana fix yourself. So like Bloodstained Mire here, you pay 1 life, sack it, search your library for a swamp or mountain, put it onto the battlefield. This is going to be able to and allow them to be able to come in untapped if you look up one of your, a Triome or something, right? Or Evolving Wilds, which typically, comes in tapped, the basic land, it's instead going to be coming in untapped. So this is insanely great for Landfall decks, for example. It means that even though you're using your Evolving Wilds, putting it in there, sacrificing it, bringing something out, you're getting 2 landfall triggers, and then on top of that, you're able to use that mana immediately. Really cool. And these, spelunking in a landfall deck is just crazy great. Anything that's doing stuff to do with landfall or with the lands is going to be useful here. We've got the tap lands here, so anything that comes in tapped, because either it is a very cheap land, or you don't have it available, like whatever condition isn't available yet, you can make it come in untapped instead, so you can save some mana that way. Or if it's something like, the Surveil lands. Surveil lands are really great. However, the only kind of downside for them is that they come in tapped. No downside now. So some commanders that this works really well with are like the Gitrog, Ravenous Ride. So this is the one where when you deal combat damage, you sacrifice whatever, like a creature that saddled it. And then if you do, you get to draw cards and then put lands onto the battlefield tapped. where X is the sacrifice creature's power. They will now come in untapped. Boom, you are just going to be ramping a whole bunch for sacking one creature. Zimone and Dina, technically, you're sacking a creature and then getting a land out, and then, you know, drawing a card. Now it's getting a land out untapped that you can then use again. It's really, really cool. And then we've got Karametra here, which is whenever you cast a creature, you can search your library for a forest or plains. Notice it's forest or plains, not a basic forest or plains. And then you're going to put it out into the battlefield tapped. Now it's untapped, and then you're just going to be able to ramp that. So each time you cast a creature spell with, you know, like if you cast a creature spell with 1 mana, you are casting that creature, finding a forest or plains, putting it onto the battlefield, untapped, and then you can do it again. It's essentially like a free creature. You're just getting free creatures out with that. So some cards that are really, really crazy with it. Nahiri's Lithoforming. So I run this in my Yuma deck, and you just get to sacrifice your lands, draw cards based on however many you sacrifice, then you can play additional lands. They're meant to enter tapped. They don't anymore. So you can just sack all your lands, put them all into the graveyard, get a million Yuma triggers, then draw a whole bunch of cards, get a whole bunch more, landfall triggers from playing those lands. And then if you've got stuff that, you know, brings those lands back from the graveyard anyway, boom. You've got Scape Shift as well, which is just sack your lands and then search your library for that many lands. This is a more expensive option to kind of run in like a Yuma deck, for example, but it is crazy great because you can just sack all your lands, go get more lands, and they're coming in untapped anyway. And the good thing is that it's, you know, you can sack the lands after you already have spent them for mana. So you spend all your lands for mana, sack them all, get a whole bunch of new ones, and then they're just new lands. So in some of the precons, there's a couple of precons that this goes really well with. The Desert Bloom one, as I said, my Yuma deck, this is really great in that because typically, you know, first of all, a lot of the deserts enter tapped. This is making it so they're not tapped, as well as it's got some like graveyard land recursion, and you can kind of lean more into that as well, with like Hazazon and stuff to bring those. Like, you know, there's other ones that kind of play from the graveyard your lands. You can do that with some great stuff here. Or the new jump scare one, the jump scare Zimone one, where you're able to get a lot more lands out because it's got a lot of landfall stuff, or play lands from graveyard, or play lands and, you know, ramp and stuff. With this deck, it's going to be really, really great because it's just ramp. Any kind of green deck that's focusing a lot more on ramp, it's going to be great. Any way you want to save money, it's going to be great. Now, there are other options that I should mention here. Amulet of Vigor makes it so any permanent that enters tapped gets untapped, which is $28. Or there's Tiller Engine, which is when a land enters tapped, you can either untap it or you can tap something of an opponent. So you've got a couple other options that do very similar stuff to this, but they're not as cheap as spelunking. And, you know, like creature's more likely to get kind of removed. I think an artifact almost is more likely to get removed than an enchantment. And Amulet of Vigor also is like more likely, I think, to get, you know, pushed down and removed because of the fact that it's making everything enter untapped. So if you've got creatures that are entering tapped and stuff like that, it's going to be potentially a target because of that. And just, you know, being this is a really cheap option to just be able to mana fix yourself. So I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you think. Honestly, like, this is, as I said, one of my favorite cards, and I just think there are so many different uses for it. And because it's just an uncommon, I think that, you know, people kind of overlook a bunch of the kind of uncommons and stuff because when they're coming out, you don't expect them to be as crazy as they are. But a few of the most recent sets have had some uncommons and commons that are just crazy, like, you know, Pick Your Poison from Carl of Mana and stuff. But let me know what you guys think. Have a great day and goodbye.